dynamic input commands are going to be used to create a lever. Create a new metric part file. Select the circle command from the ribbon's draw panel. The circle needs to be coincident to the origin. Notice the dynamic input box in the graphics window. The cursor's X and Y coordinates are displayed as the mouse is moved across the screen. When the X and Y coordinates are 0 and the glyph turns green, left-click to select. Enter a radius of 65 mm in the dynamic edit box and press Enter. Select Finish Sketch from the right-click context menu. Select Extrude from the ribbon's Create panel, or select E from the keyboard to use the shortcut. The standard extrusion dialog box is displayed. The extrusion dynamic input box is also displayed. Extrusion distance, direction, termination, and draft angle may be modified from the dynamic input controls. The direction arrow may be dragged in the opposite direction to reverse the extrusion. Select asymmetric. Enter a distance of 45 mm for the top and 35 mm for the bottom. Let's construct the lever's arm. Select the front face. Dynamic input displays icons Edit, Extrude, Edit Sketch, Create Sketch, and Close. Select Create Sketch. Select the Line command from the ribbon's Draw panel or press L on the keyboard for the shortcut. Start the line on the projected edge of the cylinder's lower quadrant. Notice the tangent constraint symbol and the dynamic input displays for the line's length and angle. You may toggle between the length and angle boxes by the keyboard's Tab key. Left-click when the line is approximately 200 mm long and tangent to the projected cylinder. Hold the left mouse button and drag to construct an arc. Release the mouse button when the endpoint is vertical to the arc's starting point. Close the sketch by selecting the projected cylinder edge in the upper quadrant. Add a horizontal dimension to the arc. Enter a value of 200 mm. Add a horizontal constraint to the center point in the arc. Turn on the degrees of freedom by selecting it from the right-click context menu. Add a 35 mm radius dimension to the arc. Add any additional constraints needed to fully constrain the sketch. Select Finish Sketch. Extrude the sketch. Select Extrude from the ribbon's Create panel. We're now going to use the Join option. The choices are Join, Cut, Intersect, and New Solid. For the Termination option, select 2. Select the XY work plane from the browser. A square end main shaft will engage the lever. Create the square cutout in the lever by selecting the bottom face of the extrusion and select Create Sketch from the dynamic input menu. Create the square cut using the rectangle command from the ribbon's Draw panel. Select a square centered on the origin. Key in 65 mm for the width and 65 mm for the height. Use the Tab key to toggle between the two boxes. Notice that a lock symbol appears after you tab out of the box. Center the square on the origin by using horizontal and vertical constraints. Finish the sketch. Extrude the sketch. Change the extrusion type to cut and the distance to through all. Select OK or press Enter. Select the base feature and select Edit Extrusion from the Dynamic Context menu. Drag the lower arrow to change the height. Select the ball at the base of the arrow to engage the draft angle. Drag the arrow to add draft angle to the extrusion. Accept the changes. Select the edge. Select Fillet from the Dynamic menu and then drag the arrow to set a fillet radius. Accept the changes.